The explosion tears through the night like the world splitting open. Dr. Elena Vasquez jolts awake in her narrow cot, the metal frame rattling beneath her as the shockwave ripples through the refugee camp. For a split second, she thinks it might be thunder, then the screaming starts. She's on her feet before her mind fully processes what's happening. Muscle memory from 3 years of working in conflict zones taking over. Her medical bag is already in her hands as she stumbles out of the volunteer quarters. The acrid smell of smoke and something worse, burning plastic, maybe flesh, hitting her nostrils. The camp's emergency lights flicker on, casting everything in harsh, stuttering shadows. Dios mío. The words escape her lips as she takes in the devastation. What used to be the eastern section of temporary shelters is now a crater surrounded by twisted metal and scattered belongings. A child's stuffed rabbit lies in the dirt, one ear blown clean off. Elena forces herself to look away and focus on what matters. The wounded. The makeshift trauma tent is already chaos when she arrives. Volunteers shout in Arabic, Spanish, and broken English, their voices creating a cacophony of panic. Blood pools on the plastic flooring, and the air is thick with dust and the metallic tang of fear. Elena counts at least 15 casualties in the first sweep of her eyes, burns, lacerations, possible internal bleeding. Her heart sinks. They're understaffed on a good day, and this is far from good. Elena! Thank God you're here. Marcus, the camp coordinator, appears at her elbow, his usually pristine shirt now splattered with someone else's blood. We've got critical cases coming in fast. The local hospital is 40 minutes away, and half these people won't make it that long. She nods, already moving toward the supply station. How many medical volunteers do we have on site? You, Dr. Patel, who's dealing with a compound fracture, and 2 nursing students who look like they're about to pass out. Marcus runs a hand through his graying hair. We call for backup, but backup takes time we don't have. Elena snaps on latex gloves, her training kicking in. Triage first. Save who you can. Don't waste time on the hopeless cases. It's a brutal calculus, but it's the only way to maximize lives saved. She moves through the wounded with practiced efficiency, marking foreheads with colored markers, red for critical, yellow for urgent, green for walking wounded. A middle-aged man with shrapnel in his chest gets red. A woman with a broken arm and cuts gets yellow. A teenager with superficial burns gets green, despite his tears. That's when she notices her. The woman appears beside Elena like smoke, materializing from the chaos without a sound. She's tall, maybe 5'8", with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that somehow remained perfect despite the disaster. Her clothes are expensive, a charcoal wool coat that probably costs more than Elena makes in a month, leather boots that have never seen real work. She looks completely out of place in the refugee camp, like a businesswoman who took a wrong turn and ended up in hell. But her hands tell a different story. Without being asked, the woman begins sorting medical supplies with the precision of someone who knows exactly what she's doing. She separates bandages by size, arranges surgical instruments in order of likely use, and prepares 4 bags with the fluid movements of someone who's done this countless times before. When Elena reaches for a pressure bandage, it's already in her hand before she can ask. "Thank you," Elena breathes. But the woman just nods and continues working. Elena tries to place her accent when she speaks briefly to comfort a crying child. Eastern European, maybe Russian or Ukrainian. But there's something else underneath it, something harder to identify. The woman's voice is soft when she speaks to the patients, but there's an undertone of command, as if she's used to being obeyed without question. The next hour passes in a blur of blood and desperate medical interventions. Elena performs an emergency tracheotomy on a man whose throat is swelling shut, her hands steady despite the primitive conditions. The mysterious woman anticipates her every need: scalpel, sutures, gauze-passing instruments with the timing of a seasoned surgical nurse. "You have medical training," Elena says during a brief moment, when they're both working on stabilizing a woman with internal bleeding. The woman's hands pause for just a fraction of a second. It's clearly a lie, or at least not the whole truth. Elena has worked with enough medical professionals to recognize expertise when she sees it. This woman doesn't just have some training. She moves with the confidence of someone who spent years in high-pressure medical situations. But there are other things that don't add up. The way she positions herself so she can see all the entrances to the tent. How her eyes constantly scan the crowd, not looking for medical supplies, but for threats. The fact that despite her expensive clothes and manicured nails, she has calluses on her hands in places that suggest weapons training, not medical instruments. "What's your name?" Elena asks as they work together to splint a child's broken leg. "Maya," the woman replies without hesitation, but Elena catches the slight pause before the answer. Another lie, or at least not the whole truth. The child, a boy of maybe 8, looks up at Maya with wide, trusting eyes. "Are you a doctor too?" Maya's expression softens in a way that seems genuine for the first time since she appeared. "No, little one. I'm just someone who wants to help." Elena watches the interaction carefully. Whatever else this woman might be hiding, her compassion for the wounded seems real. She's gentle with the children, patient with the elderly, and shows no squeamishness around even the most gruesome injuries. As dawn approaches and the immediate crisis begins to stabilize, Elena finds herself stealing glances at her mysterious helper. Maya, if that's really her name, has worked tirelessly for hours without complaint, her expensive coat now ruined with blood and dirt. She saved at least 3 lives that Elena can count. Maybe more, but questions multiply in Elena's mind like bacteria in a petri dish. Why is a woman dressed like she belongs in a boardroom, working in a refugee camp at 4 in the morning? How does she know exactly which medical supplies to prepare without being told? And why does she move like someone who's spent time in war zones, despite her obvious wealth? The biggest question, though, is one Elena doesn't want to voice. If this woman is here to help, why is every instinct Elena has developed in 3 years of working in dangerous places tell her that Maya is the most dangerous person in the tent? As the sun rises over the devastated camp, casting long shadows through the medical tent, Elena makes a decision. She's going to find out who Maya really is, even if it means putting herself at risk. Because in her experience, people who appear in disasters with perfect timing and mysterious skills usually have reasons that go far beyond simple humanitarian concern. She just hopes she's wrong about the danger she senses lurking beneath Maya's helpful exterior. Because if she's right, Elena might have just spent the night working alongside someone far more deadly than any bomb. The morning sun filters through the torn canvas of the medical tent, casting everything in a golden haze that makes the blood on the floor look almost beautiful. Elena wipes sweat from her forehead with the back of her wrist, careful not to contaminate her gloves. They've been working for 6 straight hours, and her body is beginning to protest every movement. "Doctor, we need you here." Dr. Patel's voice cuts through the relative quiet. The initial wave of casualties has been stabilized, but now they're dealing with the secondary complications: infection setting in, delayed shock, internal bleeding that wasn't immediately apparent. Elena hurries to where Patel is bent over a small form on one of the makeshift gurneys. It's a boy, maybe 7 years old, with dark hair matted with blood and dust. His breathing is shallow and rapid, and when Elena checks his pupils, they're unequal, a sign of serious head trauma. "Possible intracranial pressure," she murmurs, running her hands along the child's skull. "There's a depressed fracture just above his left ear. We need to relieve the pressure or we're going to lose him. Maya appears beside her as if summoned, already holding a surgical kit. "Burr hole?" she asks quietly. Elena's hands freeze. A burr hole is an advanced neurosurgical procedure drilling into the skull to relieve pressure on the brain. It's not something a layperson would even know the term for, let alone suggest as a treatment option. "How do you—" Elena starts. But Maya is already laying out instruments with the precision of an operating room nurse. Scalpel, drill bits, irrigation solution, hemostats. Everything arranged in the exact order Elena would need them. "The boy is dying," Maya says simply. "We can discuss my qualifications later." She's right. Elena can see the child's condition deteriorating by the minute. His breathing becomes more labored, and a thin trickle of blood appears at his nose. Without intervention, he'll be dead within the hour. Elena takes a deep breath and begins the procedure. In a proper hospital, this would require a full surgical team, sterile conditions, and sophisticated monitoring equipment. Here, she has Maya, a folding table, and whatever supplies they can scrounge from their limited stock. "Local anesthetic," Elena says. And Maya places the syringe in her hand before she finishes speaking. "Scalpel." The blade appears in her palm. "Drill." Maya hands her the manual drill they use for emergency procedures. Already fitted with the correct bit size, Elena makes the incision, her hands steady despite the primitive conditions. Maya anticipates every need irrigation when blood obscures her view, suction when fluid accumulates, fresh gauze when the old becomes saturated. They work in perfect synchronization, like dancers who've rehearsed this routine 1,000 times. As Elena carefully drills through the boy's skull, she becomes aware of how Maya positions herself, not just to assist with the surgery, but to maintain visual contact with every entrance to the tent. Her body language is coiled, ready to move at the first sign of trouble. It's the posture of someone who's learned to expect violence from any direction. "Pressure's releasing," Elena breathes as dark blood begins to flow from the burr hole. The boy's breathing immediately becomes less labored, and his color improves slightly. "Good," Maya says, but her attention seems divided. She keeps glancing toward the tent entrance, and Elena notices her hand drifting toward her coat pocket in a way that suggests she's carrying something more substantial than medical supplies. They work in tense silence for another 20 minutes, stabilizing the boy and preparing him for transport to the regional hospital. It's only when Elena is satisfied that he'll survive the journey that she allows herself to really look at Maya again. The woman is cleaning blood from her hands with methodical precision. But there's something different about her now. The helpful volunteer mask has slipped slightly, revealing something harder underneath. Her movements are more controlled, more deliberate, like a predator trying to appear domesticated. "We need to talk," Elena says quietly, Maya's hands still for just a moment. "About what?" "About how you know advanced neurosurgical procedures. About why you move like military personnel. About why you keep watching the exits like you're expecting trouble." Before Maya can respond, a commotion erupts near the tent entrance. 3 men in civilian clothes are arguing with Marcus, the camp coordinator. They're asking questions about the bombing, about who was in the camp when it happened, about whether any suspicious individuals have been seen in the area. Elena feels Maya tense beside her like a wire about to snap. "I need to check on the boy's vitals," Maya says. But she's already moving away from the entrance, positioning herself behind a stack of supply crates, where she can't be easily seen. That's when Elena notices a dot as Maya reaches across the narrow space between the gurneys to adjust the boy's foreline. Her sleeve rides up slightly. For just a moment, Elena catches a glimpse of her inner forearm, and what she sees makes her blood turn to ice. A tattoo. Not decorative, not artistic, but functional. Utilitarian. A series of small, precise marks that look almost like a barcode. But Elena recognizes them from intelligence briefings she received during her deployment in Syria. They're kill marks. Tally marks used by certain military units and mercenary organizations to track confirmed eliminations. But it's not just the marks themselves that terrify Elena, it's their context. Below the tally marks, in small, precise script, are two words in Cyrillic that Elena learned to recognize during her time treating casualties from the Eastern European conflicts. Crimson Widow. Elena's hands begin to shake. The Crimson Widow isn't just a person, it's a designation. A title given to the most elite female assassins in a shadowy organization that operates across international borders. They're ghosts legends whispered about in intelligence circles. Killers so skilled and so ruthless that governments pay millions just for the possibility of hiring one. And Elena has been working side by side with one for the past 6 hours. Maya notices. Elena staring and quickly pulls her sleeve down, but it's too late. Their eyes meet across the small space, and Elena sees her own recognition reflected in Maya's gaze. The pretense is over. How many? Elena whispers, her voice barely audible. Maya's expression doesn't change, but something shifts in her eyes. How many what? How many people have you killed? For a long moment, Maya doesn't answer. The sounds of the camp continue around them, voices, footsteps, the distant rumble of vehicles, but between them, there's only silence. Finally, Maya speaks, her voice so quiet Elena has to strain to hear it. More than I can count. Fewer than I was ordered to. Elena's mind races. Every instinct tells her to run, to call for help, to get as far away from this woman as possible. But another part of her, the part that spent years treating the victims of violence, recognizes something else in Maya's eyes. Pain. Genuine, soul-deep pain. The boy, Elena says slowly. You saved his life. Yes. Why? Maya looks down at her hands, still stained with the child's blood. Because I'm tired of taking lives. I want to try saving them instead. Before Elena can respond, one of the men questioning Marcus spots them through the tent opening. He says something to his companions, and all three begin moving in their direction. Maya's entire demeanor changes instantly. The helpful volunteer disappears, replaced by something cold and lethal. Elena, she says, her voice carrying a new urgency. Those men aren't here about the bombing. They're here for me. And if they find me, everyone in this tent dies. Elena's world tilts on its axis as the three men approach the medical tent with predatory purpose. Their casual civilian clothes don't fool her anymore. She can see the telltale bulges of concealed weapons. The way they move with coordinated precision. The cold assessment in their eyes as they scan the wounded and volunteers. Dr. Vasquez? The lead man's English is accented, possibly Russian. He's tall and lean with prematurely gray hair and the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. We're investigating the bombing. We need to speak with all medical personnel. Maya has melted into the shadows behind a stack of supply crates, but Elena can feel her presence like electricity in the air. The woman who spent hours saving lives has transformed into something else. Entirely an apex predator, calculating angles of attack and escape routes. Of course, Elena manages, her voice steadier than she feels. Though I'm not sure how much help I can be. I was asleep when it happened, naturally. The man's smile widens, showing too many teeth. But perhaps you noticed anyone unusual. Helping with the casualties? Someone who seemed out of place. Elena's mind races. Every fiber of her being screams that these men mean harm, not just to Maya, but to anyone who gets in their way. She thinks of the boy with the head trauma, still unconscious on the gurney. Of the elderly woman with burns covering 30% of her body. Of the teenage girl who lost her leg and keeps asking for her mother. Everyone here's a volunteer, Elena says carefully. We're grateful for any help we can get. The second man, shorter but broader, steps closer. His hand rests casually on his hip, near what Elena now realizes is definitely a concealed pistol. We have reason to believe a very dangerous individual may be hiding among the aid workers. Someone with specialized skills. Behind the supply crates, Elena catches the faintest movement. Maya is positioning herself, and Elena suddenly understands with crystal clarity that violence is about to erupt in a tent full of wounded civilians. Wait, Elena says quickly, stepping between the men and the supply area. If someone dangerous is here, shouldn't we evacuate the patients first? Some of them can't be moved safely, but that won't be necessary, the lead man interrupts. His facade of politeness is cracking, revealing something ugly underneath. We just need to conduct a thorough search. That's when Maya steps out from behind the crates. She moves with fluid grace, her hands visible and empty, but Elena can see the coiled tension in every muscle. The expensive coat is gone, revealing a simple black shirt that shows the full extent of the tattoos on her arms. Not just the kill marks Elena glimpsed earlier, but an intricate network of scars and symbols that tell a story of violence and survival. Katerina Volkov, the lead man, breathes, and Elena hears genuine fear beneath his attempt at control. The Crimson Widow herself. You've led us quite a chase. Dmitri, Maya Katerina replies, her voice carrying a weight of history. Still doing Kozlov's dirty work, I see. You killed our handler in Prague. You stole classified intelligence. You've compromised 3 active operations. Dmitri's hand moves toward his weapon. The organization wants you back. Alive, preferably, but that's negotiable. Elena's breath catches as she realizes she's standing in the middle of what's essentially a standoff between international assassins. But instead of backing away, she finds herself studying Katerina's face. The woman who spent hours gently treating wounded children is still there. But now Elena can see the layers beneath, the training, the violence, the carefully controlled lethality. I'm not going back, Katerina says simply. I'm done killing for Kozlov. I'm done killing for anyone. Dmitri laughs, a sound like breaking glass. You think you can just walk away? After everything, you know? After what you've done? I think, Katerina says, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carries more menace than a shout, that you're standing in a medical tent full of innocent people. And I think you should leave. Now. The tension ratchets higher. Elena can see the other 2 men spreading out, trying to flank Katerina's position. In seconds, this is going to become a firefight, and the wounded civilians will be caught in the crossfire. That's when Elena makes a decision that surprises even herself. She's under my protection, Elena announces, stepping directly between Katerina and the 3 men. Everyone freezes. Dmitri stares at Elena like she's lost her mind. Excuse me? Dr. Elena Vasquez, Medicine Sans Frontières, Elena says, pulling out her identification with hands that barely shake. This woman has been providing medical assistance under the protection of international humanitarian law. Any attempt to harm her or remove her from this medical facility would constitute a war crime. It's a bluff, and not even a particularly good one. Elena knows that international law means nothing to people like this, but she's betting that they don't want to create an international incident by murdering a well-known humanitarian doctor. Dmitri's eyes narrow. Doctor, you don't understand what you're dealing with. This woman is a killer. She's responsible for dozens of deaths across 3 continents. Right now, Elena says firmly, she's responsible for saving the life of a 7-year-old boy. And that's all I care about. Behind her, Elena hears Katerina's sharp intake of breath. When she glances back, she sees something she didn't expect in the assassin's eyes. Surprise. and something that might be gratitude. You have no idea what you're doing, Dmitri warns, but Elena can hear uncertainty creeping into his voice. The organization has a long memory. Cross us, and what? Elena interrupts. You'll add a humanitarian doctor to your list of targets? Do you have any idea how much international attention that would bring? How many governments would suddenly become very interested in your organization's activities? The standoff stretches for long seconds. Elena can hear her own heartbeat, can smell the antiseptic and blood that permeates the medical tent, can feel the weight of wounded eyes watching this confrontation unfold. Finally, Dmitri steps back. This isn't over, Katerina. You can't hide behind doctors forever. I'm not hiding, Katerina replies. I'm choosing a different path. There is no different path for people like us, Dmitri snarls. You'll remember that soon enough. The three men withdraw, but Elena knows they're not giving up. They're regrouping, planning, waiting for a better opportunity. As soon as they're out of sight, Elena turns to face Katerina. Why? Katerina asks quietly. Why did you protect me? Elena looks around the tent, at the boy whose life Katerina helped save, at the other patients who are alive because of her skilled assistance, at the blood on Katerina's hands that came from healing instead of killing. Because, Elena says slowly, I've spent 3 years treating the victims of violence. I've seen what people like you can do when they choose destruction. She pauses, meeting Katerina's eyes directly. But I've also seen what you chose to do tonight. And I think maybe people can change. Even people like you. Katerina's composure finally cracks. For just a moment, Elena sees past all the training and violence to something raw and vulnerable underneath. You don't know what I've done. The things I've been forced to do. No, Elena agrees. But I know what you did here. And right now, that's enough. Outside the tent, Elena can hear vehicles starting up, but she knows Dmitri and his team haven't gone far. The real test is just beginning. The silence that follows Dmitri's departure feels fragile, like the moment before a dam breaks. Elena watches Katerina's face cycle through emotions, relief, fear, something that might be hope before settling back into the controlled mask of a professional killer. They'll be back, Katerina says quietly, moving to the tent's edge and peering through a gap in the canvas. Probably within the hour. Dmitri doesn't give up easily. Elena's hands are shaking now that the immediate confrontation is over, adrenaline flooding her system. How many of them are there? In the immediate area? Maybe a dozen. But the organization has resources you can't imagine. Money, weapons, government contacts. Katerina turns back to Elena, and her expression is grim. They won't stop until they have me back, or I'm dead. And they won't hesitate to kill anyone who gets in their way. The weight of what Elena has done begins to settle on her shoulders. She's not just protected a former assassin, she's made herself and everyone in the camp a target. The wounded patients, the volunteers, the refugees who've already lost everything. They're all in danger because of her decision. There has to be a way out of this, Elena says. But even as she speaks, she can hear vehicles circling the camp's perimeter. Dmitri's team is setting up a containment grid. Katerina checks her watch, a sleek, expensive piece that looks out of place on her blood-stained wrist. The morning supply convoy arrives in 43 minutes. If we can reach the main road before they complete their perimeter, Elena interrupts. You can't stay here. Katerina's voice is matter-of-fact, but Elena catches the underlying concern. You've seen my face. You know my real name. The organization doesn't leave loose ends. Elena looks around the medical tent, at the boy with the head trauma who's finally showing signs of consciousness, at the elderly woman whose burns are responding to treatment, at the teenage girl who's learning to use crutches. I can't abandon my patients. Your patients will be dead if Dmitri decides to use them as leverage, Katerina says bluntly. These people don't have rules of engagement. They don't care about civilian casualties. As if summoned by her words, the sound of automatic weapons fire erupts from the eastern edge of the camp. Not aimed at anyone yet, but a clear message. The hunters are tightening their noose. Elena's radio crackles to life. Marcus's voice, tight with fear. All medical personnel. We have armed individuals demanding access to the medical facilities. They claim to be investigating the bombing, but they're not showing proper identification. What's our protocol here? Elena exchanges a look with Katerina, who shakes her head grimly. Tell them to comply with their demands, Katerina says. Any resistance will just get people killed. But Elena has spent 3 years in conflict zones, and she's learned to read between the lines of violence. Marcus, she says into the radio, implement Code 7. There's a pause. Code 7 isn't an official protocol, it's something Elena and Marcus developed after a particularly bad incident in Syria. It means evacuate who you can, destroy sensitive materials, and prepare for the worst. Copy that, Elena. Code 7 in effect. Katerina raises an eyebrow. What's Code 7? Emergency evacuation protocol. We get the most critical patients to the vehicles. Destroy medical records that could identify refugees and scatter. Elena is already moving, checking 4 lines and assessing which patients can be moved safely. We've had to do it twice before when military units decided on neutrality was negotiable. For the first time since Elena learned her true identity. Katerina smiles a real smile, not the practiced expressions of her cover identity. You're not what I expected from a humanitarian doctor. And you're not what I expected from an international assassin, Elena replies, carefully disconnecting the head trauma boy from his monitoring equipment. Guess we're both full of surprises. They work together with desperate efficiency, preparing the most vulnerable patients for transport. Katerina's knowledge of field medicine proves invaluable. She knows exactly how to stabilize someone for rough travel, how to jury-rig portable life support, how to make hard decisions about who can wait and who can't. Elena. Katerina's voice is urgent. We have a problem. Elena looks up from securing in 4 line to see Katerina staring at something outside the tent. Following her gaze, Elena's heart sinks. 3 black SUVs have positioned themselves to block the main road, the only route the evacuation vehicles can take. They're not just here for me, Katerina realizes. They're going to use the evacuation as cover to search everyone. They'll find me, and anyone who tries to protect me. She doesn't need to finish the sentence. Elena can imagine the carnage that would follow. There's another way, Elena says suddenly. The old smuggling route through the hills. It's rough, but it connects to the highway about 10 kilometers north. Katerina shakes her head. That route is exposed. They'll have spotters, maybe drones. We'd be sitting ducks. Not if we create a diversion. Elena's plan is insane, and she knows it. But as she explains it to Katerina, she sees something change in the other woman's expression. The cold calculation of a professional killer gives way to something else. The desperate hope of someone who's found something worth protecting. You're talking about sacrificing yourself. Katerina says flatly. I'm talking about doing my job, Elena corrects. My job is to save lives. All of them, including yours. The plan is simple in its audacity. Elena will surrender herself to Dmitri's team, claiming she was coerced into helping Katerina. While they're focused on interrogating her, Katerina will lead the evacuation convoy through the smuggling route. By the time Dmitri realizes he's been played, the patients and volunteers will be safely away. It won't work, Katerina says, but Elena can hear the uncertainty in her voice. They'll kill you as soon as they realize you're lying. Maybe, but maybe not. I'm a known humanitarian worker with international connections. Killing me would bring attention they don't want. Elena meets Katerina's eyes. Besides, you said it yourself, people like you don't get to choose a different path. But maybe people like me can choose it for you. Outside, the sound of approaching vehicles grows louder. They're out of time. Katerina does something Elena doesn't expect. She reaches into her coat and pulls out a small, encrypted satellite phone. There's a number programmed in here. Dr. Sarah Chun. She runs a clinic in rural Guatemala. Tell her Katerina sent you. Tell her you need papers and a new identity. She presses the phone into Elena's hands. If you survive this, if you get out, come find me. What about you? Elena asks. Katerina's smile is sad but genuine. I'm going to do something I've never done before. I'm going to save people instead of killing them. And maybe that's enough to start over. The tent flap bursts open, and Dmitri strides in with his weapon drawn. But instead of finding his target, he finds Elena standing alone beside the wounded boy, her hands raised in surrender. Where is she? He demands. Elena looks him straight in the eye. Gone, and you're too late to stop her. As Dmitri's face contorts with rage, Elena hears the distant sound of vehicles moving through the hills, the evacuation convoy making its escape. In her pocket, the satellite phone feels like a promise of redemption, for both her and the woman who chose. Healing over killing when it mattered most. The last thing Elena sees before Dmitri's men restrain her is the boy with the head trauma opening his eyes and asking for his mother. Alive. Safe. Worth everything.